everyone, welcome back to Flow State Reactions. I am Star, and I am here yet again to react to The Lord of the Rings, and this is the behind the scenes appendices to The Hobbit, and we are now moving on to Durin's folk, creating the dwarves. Okay, all right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging in there with me on this long journey behind the scenes. I am enjoying myself, and let's go ahead and get into this next video. Okay, all right, you guys, 1, 2, 3, let's flow. Creating the dwarves.
The process for any culture is never random. We start the whole process by trying to find the central graphic motif, the design signature that speaks across a whole race of people. In the case of the dwarves, it's about thinking of their cultural reference in architecture, how they mine the granite below their feet, how they're empowered by the riches of the world and their need to hoard those riches, and how that brings a signature to the way they may dress, the way they may adorn their hair. All of these things start to build a rounded design that hopefully gels them as a culture and makes them significant in the eyes of the audience.
These illustrations.
This is the first
oh my
time
goodness.
that we'll have the opportunity to actually get to know a dwarvish race, and I honestly believe that Peter is going to do for dwarves what Tolkien did for elves, removing what nursery rhyme and folktale has done, which is to diminish them. If you talk to the man in the street and said the word elf before Lord of the Rings, an elf would be similar to a fairy, something quite small,
right?
lives underground, perhaps in the garden.
Right.
And after
that is true.
The Lord of the Rings, the whole nature of elves has changed in people's imaginations, and they've reacquired a certain grandeur that they lost. And I think, honestly, that Peter's going to pull it off with dwarves.
Very interesting. Right, I was first introduced to elves when I watched The Rings of Power. I didn't even know. I didn't know it was so deeply rooted in fantasy. I thought it was more grounded in reality. So I was really shocked.
A very unique group of characters in their physiology,
elves
their
in
stature.
These stories are different.
They almost
from
see
what
eye
I knew.
to eye with a hobbit, but they couldn't be further from a hobbit.
They have a very short stature, but at the same time we want to reflect that they're like little armoured tanks. They're very, not someone to be trifled with.
They're warmongers at some level. They've been hardened in the mines, and therefore they're these wonderful, tough, nuggety, stout characters.
They are people of the earth, a tough race, but they're also a very insular race. They, in other words, they don't mix with people. They're not a social type of people.
They're one of the most intriguing races because they're so secretive. Secretive with their language, secretive with where they came from. They're also an incredibly noble race and proud race.
They're a powerful, resolute folk who will fight you as intensely as possible on the things that they disagree with you on, and be your most loyal companion on the things at which you agree upon.
Developing the characters of the dwarves came mostly maybe 10% from Tolkien, because that's really, just about all there is for most of them in the book. It came from, 50%, 60% of choosing the actors to play the characters. But then the other 30-40% came from Weta Workshop.
There was, as always, a lot of speculation in the workshop as to what a dwarf was going to be. Now, the only character reference we actually had, I guess, from Peter's interpretation was Gimli from Lord of the Rings.
Right, Gimli.
We realised really early on that if you have 13 dwarves that all look like Gimli on screen, it's just, it's going to be, 1, visually uninteresting, and 2, confusing.
Right.
Your thoughts wander to some of the dwarves that are sitting next to Gimli in the Council of Elrond, who are basically hairy squares and frowny big square foreheads. And so they're the dwarves that you've only ever seen. As a concept designer who has been briefed and watched Fellowship of the Ring and everything, that's your starting point.
Whenever Tolkien offers anything, we'll hang so much on it, and that's never more the case with Tolkien's development of his alphabets. The Dwarven alphabet has got an amazing architectural quality of it, as if hewn from the rock. And those elements, those
Hewn
graphic
from the rock.
motifs, play a huge part in developing the graphics in everything from the simple embroidered band on the edge of a piece of clothing right through to how the pillars of a mountain may be held up. There is such wealth in those original ideas.
That one, the angles are pleasing. They kind of follow the logic of what's already there, and the geometric lines.
He's going to be a terrific soldier.
Often we start design many, many months before an actor is hired, but you've got to get going. So you utilise any means available to you.
We were doing a lot of drawings and stuff, and then Alan and John, they took a photograph of each other, and then in Photoshop, they changed how they looked and turned themselves into dwarves.
John took photographs of each other and then just photoshopped large noses and beards and ears and moustaches.
Peter saw that and loved it.
So you'll get enough
I think
of
he
a
saw
difference
how you
in
could
everyone.
take an actor, or a designer in this case, and very quickly and in Photoshop come up with a very realistic exploration of what a dwarf might look like.
It's not in the contract, but it's almost a byline of working at the workshop that you are going to be put into something at some stage in your career there. So very early on, we were testing the male dwarven characters on a couple of the workshop guys.
Oh, look at that.
Of course, it makes for great entertainment when we finally get to the first makeup test and we get to glue a dwarf prosthetic onto the mould makeup.
Oh, big time. It looks fantastic.
Wow, look at that. It does look fantastic.
Thanks. I haven't even got makeup on yet.
In our first test, we had dwarves with huge ears, massive faces, noses that overhung their mouths.
We definitely tried the extreme first, really trying to try every trick in the book to make these guys feel really squat and powerful.
It made a huge difference when we actually had the actor who was going to be cast in each role confirmed to us and we started seeing pictures of them, because we're all imagining what these characters might be.
We gave Weta Workshop a photo of that actor, and they photoshopped different designs over the top of those photos and looked at them on the wall, and they were the actors' faces, photographs, with this wonderful Photoshop artwork.
We went through an extensive, very fast period of design, interacting with Peter almost daily.
My goodness,
You might want to try
his hand is in every little
not so much big pointy noses
area
like this,
on
but
the Hobbit
something
too.
with a noble
Dang,
line
every
to it.
single thing.
I mean, that's almost
Even
there,
designing
actually.
the way
It's
the
just maybe
dwarves
a little
look.
bit too curved on top.
In the very
Their
early
face,
stages,
their
you
nose,
get to do
their
your
eyes.
version of it. So, you're getting paid to do the character that you read in the books.
They would come back to us with maybe 6 or 7 different designs for Bomba or 6 or 7 different designs for Balin. They just try different things.
Ori, for the most part, Ori is a total miss. This guy's a comedy dwarf, okay? This guy's a mummy's boy. Yeah. So he's got to appear pretty dorky. So, putting that haircut on this guy here could be quite funny.
In turn, what you're doing is you're funneling from the widest possible spectrum of ideas down and down and down and down and down until you get to the thing that's built.
And we got to a point where we chose one look, which was then sculpted in clay, full size.
Sculpture can be rotated 360 degrees, so a director can look at it straight on, just like the image, but then can move around it, can stand above it, look underneath it, and understand it as a form.
When you see where his eyeballs are, feels like you could afford to have a little bit more meat in there underneath his hair.
I remember endless meetings at Weta Workshop and trying to get points of difference.
Meetings just on how the.
And
well, I mean, I guess
we
it is
always would
important how they
explore
look.
battle injuries and scars. And
But it's
somewhere
so
in the
much
middle of
more
all those
detailed than I thought.
conversations, I just thought it would be cool to have a broken orc axe embedded in one of their heads.
Oh, Lord.
And Biffa was the one who got the gold ticket.
The axe in the head is just pure Peter. We're rolling our eyes as he really, Pete.
It's ridiculous, but part of that appealed to me. I mean, to me, there is a childish charm about the dwarves, particularly in The Hobbit. I mean, that's kind of where it came from. It's just something that's rather silly.
We like this, Dory.
Dory, he's
That's a good idea,
very
though.
fussing. He fusses about a lot.
A bit fussy dwarf is all like this, and he's a bit finicky.
And so we thought giving him a very fussy hairdo would suit his character quite well.
These are two of quite a few different head patterns, because Peter liked the beard enough, and it's ornate and it's plaited, but it's also functional because it's keeping his beard out of the way, because they're going to be going through forests and thorn bushes and all sorts of stuff like that.
We did a round of designs.
Bomber, he is the fattest of them all, and therefore he needs to be portrayed as that.
One of the ideas that I had for Bomber was the idea that because he's fairly food orientated, that his beard and hair could actually be small containers that he secrets away particular tidbits that he'll nibble on later.
Are you kidding?
So the food influence for Bomber was quite big.
Almost as a bit of a lark, I designed
even
Bomber
notice
with
that.
his
Was
beard,
he,
which
like,
is just
nibbling
this big
all the
donut,
time?
this big circle, because it's just one more circle that emphasises his character.
So funny.
And in a meeting, Peter was like, yep, well, that one there.
Bomber looks amazing.
Yeah, we think Bomber's great.
By this stage, Peter had seen a lot of designs, and he really
very
wanted to see something
interesting.
different for Nori, something that's crazy, that hasn't been seen yet.
Yeah.
And so I came up with the kind of what's called the starfish now. And yeah, Pete really liked it.
They did a very good job of pushing variation, and that's, I think, where Peter was quite clever in that respect, that he would allow these huge, diverse differences. And then when you see them as a group, they work.
There was a great moment, I remember, when we were in the meeting room and the actors had arrived in New Zealand a few weeks before we were due to start shooting, and they had no idea what they were going to look like.
All right, so I will welcome you all here. Thank you very, very much. Those of you that have travelled all this way and those that haven't.
So they had the sculptors designed in their minds before even, they didn't incorporate the individual actor's face into the design, which is interesting. Wait, is that his face? Oh, okay. Oh,
They all clapped and
used a
cheered
photo?
as each photo came up to see what basically they were going to be looking like for the next 2.5 years.
Ori being the youngest of the troop.
After you'd seen one, like you'd see your one, and you said, well, how can it get better than that? Or how can it equal that? How can anybody be... And they managed it. They really did.
Yeah, they did. Just a review, you know, how they must feel.
Worse damage than has already been done.
One of the things we found back in the Lord of the Rings days is if you take a regular size actor and you reduce them to the height of, you know, one of Tolkien's dwarves, they do just look like a person shrunk. I mean, they don't actually have the status and the gravity and the nuggety kind of quality that you imagine one of these fantastical dwarves to have. What we had to do, and it was a real trick, and we spent a long time trying to figure this out, is we bulk them out so that when they were reduced, they didn't feel like a little human being.
You have to give the illusion that their limbs are thicker, their groin is lower, their knees are lower, so therefore their legs are shorter, their feet are larger, their hands are larger, and in turn their head is larger.
Head-to-body ratio was one of the big things. A dwarf has a 5-to-1 head-to-body ratio, as in their head will fit inside their body 5 times. A human is usually around 7 or 8 for a fully grown man. So increasing the size of their head, increasing the size of their hands all came into our initial prototype.
Like that?
Peter did something really interesting. Very early on, he said he wanted to be able to pick each dwarf out of a silhouette. In a group, you could tell who you were looking at just literally by their silhouette.
How
interesting.
Do you get an audience to watch a shot where silhouetted actors are walking across the top of a mountain and you go, there's him and I know him and I remember him, and because without that it just becomes a mush.
We did several drawings between myself and Weta Workshop. We literally just drew around the photographs of the actors and got a basic silhouette shape. I mean, there were about 8 or 9 rows of 13 dwarves with just silhouettes.
The sun is
somewhere
coming
round
through
shoulders,
the
big
blinds.
shoulders, all guided by what Peter had said about certain characters.
Some had to be more specifically heroic, some had to be extremely rotund and sort of more comedic.
That sort of shape is quite funny for Biffa. You know, it's quite a comical, slightly comical shape because his head looks quite large, and he's got this little tummy, and I think that's quite funny and quite humorous.
At that point, we started making the fat suits and getting that silhouette to the point that Peter had chosen.
We had a rough sort of outline, a silhouette that we were trying to achieve for each of the dwarves. And basically, piece by piece, body part by body part, we had to trial and error to create those shapes.
So these basically became components, and so you'd have a thigh component, a calf component, a chest, a belly, a shoulder. You know, it's almost like replicating the anatomy.
It's so fiendishly clever how they're able to articulate with your body, so that there's no part of you
fiendishly
that
clever
doesn't look as if it's that actual size.
We have many different sizes of fat suits. It makes us look wider.
Very interesting. So they had this on the whole time, and then they had to have on the outfit and the armor, and the face, and the hair,
the same basic principle bodysuit. So they all have a.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to stop the editing for this particular video right here. Let me just say, I was really blown away by the process of creating these dwarves, because it just never really occurred to me just how much effort and time and creative vision that it was going to take for everyone to come up with different ideas of how to present a dwarf. Because at one point they mentioned that they didn't want all the dwarves to look like Gimli, right? And so because of that, they had to brainstorm on different ways to bring these characters to life, and I just loved it. I really did. I even loved the funny idea from Peter to include the axe in I forget the particular dwarf's name, head, but I mean, come on, it just, the creativity is just off the charts, you know what I'm saying? I love the idea that they wanted to make sure that people who are familiar with The Hobbit, you could tell which particular dwarf was who just based off of their silhouettes. And so I just love the attention to detail that they put into everything that they put up on screen. You know, it didn't even occur to me, but it is a rather large main cast of characters. Like with our Fellowship of the Ring, we had 9 characters, and but they were different. Like they were of different species. We had hobbits, and then we had our dwarf, and then we had our elf, and then we had our wizard, and then we had our Aragorn and our Boromir, our human beings, right? So but with this cast, it's all dwarves. And so they were pretty clever in coming up with a way to make them completely different, okay? So I was just really shocked about, you know, just how much effort went into that. You know, there are certain things that you just don't even consider when you're watching these movies, but they took so much time. You know, they started off with the sculptures, and then of course they moved on to the prosthetics, and then they still had to keep re-editing everything, even when they put it on the particular actor. So I love knowing you know, what the process was like. I love learning more and more about it. I also like the very beginning where it started off with all of these beautiful, elaborate illustrations that just take my breath away. Every time I see just like the illustrations that I'm assuming were a part of the books, the Lord of the Rings, or the Hobbit rather, the Hobbit books, or maybe like independent artists created illustrations based off of Tolkien's words. But my goodness, it's just marvelous to me that people have that type of talent. I mean, really, to just bring those words to life in the picture form. And it's so much detail. It's just so impressive. But I'm just going to wrap this up really quickly. I do also like when they mentioned about how Tolkien created an evolution in the minds of people regarding elves. And I was like, dang. Yeah, you know, I didn't even really consider that, but that is so true because we have a very distinct, or rather, well, I know I had a rather distinct image of what an elf was before I ventured into this realm. And it started for me with Rings of Power, and it just really blew my mind. Like I hadn't known of elves in that way before. And they're so commanding and so royal and so strong-willed and physically strong as well, and big. Like they're tall, like they're not these little bitty fairies, you know. In the gardens, they're like these commanding forces that are like warriors of light. Oh, I'm telling you. And so Tolkien really did evolve that perspective of elves, and I feel like Peter really did a great job with evolving the idea of what a dwarf is, based off of Tolkien's word. It's a completely different species, and I could feel that. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. That's going to be my wrap up, and I will see you guys again soon with part 2. All right, until next time, I love you, and let's flow.